Good evening and welcome to season 3, episode 1 of the Non-Existent story. After a 1-year hiatus, we are back with a slightly different format. To remind you, my name is Casey and this is my sister Hannah.
Hello, I'm Hannah.
And the new format is gonna look a little bit different. Instead of the guessing game that we had for the first 2 seasons, we basically are choosing in advance a literary text, um, and then we both read the text, and then we both write something that is in some way inspired by or renders homage to or parodies or emulates or desecrates or in some way riffs off of that text. So another, maybe a second-rate copy, maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit worse, but in the spirit of the original work. So the first part will be kind of a discussion about the defining qualities of the work that we're talking about. And in the second part, we're going to share our little riffs or the little text that were inspired by our reading of whatever we chose. And this week, or this month, let's say this month, Hannah has chosen Tennessee Williams's play, The Glass Menagerie. So Hannah, maybe you could tell us a little bit about why you chose this work and what drew you to it.
I will. So the reason that I chose this work was because I was in a time crunch and I had to make a decision. I like plays. I don't think in the past we've explored plays so much, and so I thought that would be kind of cool. And I find myself drawn to like the male authors depicting fragile women, and like miniature glass is like a theme. Like the Glass Menagerie, of course, is like the first work that I think of that comes to mind, but there are other instances of this in literature. If you've read In Cold Blood, and I mean this is true crime, one of the very first American true crime novels, in fact, that I'm aware of. But the mother within that family who was killed is kind of depicted. Some people that knew her said almost in a caricature in that novel, and that she was this fragile, mentally unstable woman who was obsessed with tiny things and tiny fragile things and bits of glass that she would like maintain in her home. So I just feel like it's kind of a reoccurring little theme of like unstable women and like obsessions with small fragile things. And maybe this is just a device to demonstrate how really fragile and delicate their mental states are. But I find it quite interesting. And so for that reason, and also because Tennessee Williams has a sort of interesting backstory within this play, a lot of people consider it is a memory play. He talks about it being a memory play. A lot of people described how it is quite autobiographical because he did in fact have a sister who had some mental issues. It doesn't get explored in this play, but I believe that his sister ultimately was lobotomized. And so that left quite, yes. So that left
really? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I figured I would have guessed that there was an autobiographical element. But wow, that's intense.
Yeah, she was lobotomized. And then there's a whole other backstory there of authors who have like family members, almost exclusively female family members who've experienced a lobotomy. Like JFK's sister, for example, Rosalie, I think her name was, who was also lobotomized.
This is our next category. Authors who have had sisters who have been lobotomized.
There are some
anthology.
There are some funky themes at play here, and it all factors into, for me, this sort of like concept of the female psyche interpreted by male authors who try to address it, and their best way of addressing it is using this device of like fragile pieces of glass and a woman's obsession with tiny delicate things. It's bizarre to me, but it's recurring, and I wish more people were talking about it. But anyway, that's kind of the backstory into why I think The Glass Menagerie is an interesting play.
Okay, interesting. That would have those are not the elements that like jumped out to me as like so central. But I mean the miniature thing and why people love miniatures is something that I've never really been able to answer for myself. Even though if you go to Michael's or AC Moore, like there's a whole aisle that's devoted to like doll houses and like miniature everythings, and like the miniature rooms at the Chicago Art Institute are very, very popular and very detailed and stuff. They're like little tiny rooms and you peek in, and like they're precise replicas of like drawing houses in like a 16th century French chateau or whatever. So like there's like a fascination with miniatures, I guess. But I wouldn't like, I think what jumped out with me to me with this work is it's a family drama. There's this really high level of emotional distress and anxiety, and the characters are constantly erupting. But basically, it's about the relationship between a mother, a daughter, and her son, and the different kinds of pasts that they have, and the different kinds of expectations that those pasts kind of thrust upon them. So the mother is like a displaced Southern belle who is kind of like what would happen if Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind were like put into like a cheap public housing flat with like a daughter who has some kind of like mild disability that's not really clear, and then there's the one son who has to provide for them because they were abandoned by the father, but then the father's picture is still there. So like the son has all these pressures, and basically there's this sense of like, well, you see that the father has abandoned these people and that they're very like vulnerable and fragile, like you're saying. But at the beginning of the play, you're like, wow, that guy is a really bad guy that he did that. And by the end of the play, there's a sense that you can understand why the father would have abandoned them, like the intense claustrophobia and feeling of entrapment that it evokes is, I think, like really cool. I also, did you read the introduction that he wrote about it, Tennessee Williams?
Well, I don't know. It depends on. I have an introduction, but my copy is from a drama pocketbook anthology, and so the introduction is by Tennessee Williams. It's by R.S. Gwynn, some dude who compiled the anthology. Okay. But I did read the descriptions in the beginning of the actual play that create the setting, and that is possibly my favorite part of the play. Just it's like Tennessee Williams as a 14-year-old angsty teenager describing this part of the city, and his impression of apartment complexes in particular is pretty fantastic.
There's a lot of teenage angst for sure powering it. You can see it being kind of an adolescent play. It was his first big success. I don't know what your relationship to Tennessee Williams is. Mine was that I had seen Cat on a Hot Tin Roof twice. I really liked that movie, and I thought Tennessee Williams was a woman. I later learned that Tennessee Williams was a gay man. But at the time, I was like really convinced, like I had an image in my head. And then I've seen A Streetcar Named Desire a long time ago, and maybe one other one that I don't really remember, but only like the film versions. I've never seen them. I've never seen them performed. But there's a theater pretty close to where we live here in Chicago that performs them really regularly, and they play up the homosexual component, like that aspect of like quest for identity that's really like more apparent in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and some of his other ones. It's not an element in this one. It really isn't. No. But it was also, it was first staged here in Chicago as well. And it was the first one that made him a lot of money.
And the Glass Menagerie one?
Yeah. It was really cool. Yeah. So it was at the the Lyric Opera, I think. Is where they actually staged it originally. And then he made a lot of money, and then he got really successful for like a week, and he was in a 5-star hotel, and he had a breakdown because of success and how much it depressed him. And he went to Mexico and he wrote A Streetcar Named Desire. It was like the horrors of room service. He like goes on and on about how he accidentally put the fudge on top of the steak and thinking it was steak sauce. And like he's very sensitive. Sensitive, like taut writer. I think that comes across. So you were talking about this other things that like struck you or that you liked about this particular work.
No, that was pretty much it.
Yeah. Would you say it's good, or would you say it's like a little too much? Is it like too melodramatic?
I've never seen it performed, so that leaves some question marks in my mind. I would love to see it performed. It's not a very lengthy play.
Yes, thank you.
So yeah, you're welcome about that. And I don't know that I would want to see it performed the way that he would want it performed, based on the hints about like music and descending and ascending screens and images. I think that he had some concept of it being like a very like memory, neuroscientific, psychological type of play with like impressions.
It would be
And he was
expressionist,
particular
yeah.
about like the music that was going to be played at different times. Like Ave Maria was supposed to be performed at a certain point while a conversation was taking place between the mother and the son. And just reading through it, it definitely had like some sort of 1940s concept of what is abstract and mentally deep man. And I don't think I would care to see it presented that way. I think it could be presented in a more sophisticated and suggestive and interesting way. But I do think that I think that it has something to offer. Just if you can become engaged in a play just by reading it, then it has something to offer as far as being performed, I think. And I did take away some interesting ideas just from reading the play.
About how the past haunts one. And he's really into experimental, elaborate sets. But then in the same introduction that I was mentioning to you, he says that later when it was performed, right? So originally he wanted there to be like this screen behind, and then there would be like these subtitles, and there would be like a video in the background contrasting with what was happening with like the particular character. So like a version of them in the past. There's also a narrator, which is weird in a play. And
but it's the son that's the narrator, and he goes back and forth between interacting as a character in the play and then to the side narrating, which I do like that device. I think it's very interesting, like the playing with the fourth wall. I like that. I think it's well done. It's effective.
Yeah, no, for sure. So there's like lots of like you're saying, like playing with the fourth wall, using video, which was like kind of a new thing, or like a projector at least. I wouldn't have really been like video in the way we know it. And then he talks a lot about because it's a memory play, like it's not supposed to look realistic. It's almost, I imagine it like an expressionist kind of setting where the space is a projection of the psyche of the characters. So angles, exaggerations, really high contrast, like that stuff was still like very influential. And that's also like a thing that I picked up and I tried to incorporate. And like my version is like the relationship, how the space around you, or like the objects, if it's the Glass Menagerie, for example, are supposed to reflect very obviously and very clearly and very dramatically the qualities and the inner state of the psyche of the person. And I liked the mother's character a lot. I really enjoyed her. I imagine her very vivid.
This is perhaps a good segue to go into reading, because I also love the mother's character, and for that reason, and because she's such a catalyst in this play, I had to eliminate her in some way to see what would happen. So that was part of the device that I used as my adjustment to a Tennessee Williams play, which we'll see how that works out.
Okay, well, yeah, let's launch into it. Do you want to talk about your procedure, or would you rather just read it and then we'll talk about your procedure?
I think I'll read first. I'm interested in how it comes across, and I don't want to. I want to let it speak for itself before.
Sounds good.
I will begin. This is very brief. This is the majority of Act 4, but you'll find an extremely abbreviated version of the original Act 4. But first, it will be preceded by a mostly new description of the three characters of the play, not including the gentleman caller, which is the son, Laura the daughter, and Amanda the mother. List of characters: Tom Wingfield, the son, and the narrator of the play. A poet with a job in a warehouse. His nature is not remorseless, but to escape from a trap, he has to act without pity. He is oblivious to the fact that his mother is a glass bird. Laura Wingfield, the daughter. Laura's connection to reality is even weaker than Tom's. A childhood illness has left her crippled, one leg slightly shorter than the other and held in a brace. This defect need not be more than suggested on the stage. Stemming from this, Laura's separation increases till she, like her mother, becomes a piece of her own glass collection, too exquisitely fragile to move from the shelf. The mother. A glass bird, center perched in a portable wedding white cage. As ornate as she is fragile, she is silent and glittering as a tiny peacock. Tom and Laura must carry the cage from room to room when they speak to the bird, but appear oblivious to the fact that it does not speak back and is an inanimate object. Scene 4. The church bell is heard striking 6. At the 6th stroke, the alarm clock goes off on the kitchen table, where someone has also left the bird cage. A small spotlight shines on the cage, and the glass bird inside begins to sparkle. After a few moments, Tom rises up slowly from his bed. Tom, I'll rise, but I won't shine. The light increases. Laura slips into the front room. Laura, Tom, it's nearly 7. Don't make Mother nervous. He stares at her stupidly, beseechingly. Tom, speak to Mother this morning. Make up with her. Apologize. Speak to her. Tom, she won't to me. It's her that started not speaking. Laura, if you just say you're sorry, she'll start speaking. Her not speaking, is that such a tragedy? Please, please. Tom and Laura glance to the kitchenette, where the spotlight on the white cage flickers. Laura, going, going. Soon as I get on my coat. She pulls on a shapeless felt hat with nervous, jerky movement, pleadingly glancing at Tom. Rushes awkwardly for the coat and looks again to the kitchen. Butter and what else? Mother, they make such faces when I do that. Pauses again, shakes her head and hurries to the door, turns to address her brother. Do what I asked you, will you, Tom? He looks sullenly away. Laura, rushing out, going, going. A second later, she cries out. Tom springs up and crosses through the kitchen, grabbing the cage on his way, and opens the door. He holds the cage so that the bird within may also peer outside. Tom, Laura! Laura, I'm all right. I slipped, but I'm all right. Tom nods, closes the door, and returns listlessly to the kitchen. He sets the cage back on the table, glances at it sheepishly as he prepares his coffee. The coffee is scalding hot. He sips it and gasps and spits it back in the cup. Tom blows on his coffee, glancing sideways at the bird cage. He clears his throat. He starts to rise, sinks back down again, scratches his head, clears his throat again. Tom raises his cup in both hands to blow on it, his eyes staring over the rim at the bird cage for several moments. Then he slowly sets the cup down and awkwardly and hesitantly rises from the chair. Hoarsely, Mother, I apologize. Mother. He adjusts the cage so that the glass bird faces him directly. I'm sorry for what I said, for everything that I said. I didn't mean it. The spotlight shines faintly on the cage. Once again, the glass bird inside begins to sparkle. No, you don't. I understand. I try, Mother. His tone is gentle and amused. What, Mother? I will never be a drunkard. Just coffee, Mother. No, Mother, just coffee. No, thank you. No, thank you. I want it black. Sits back down. What is it, Mother, that you want to discuss? Tom pauses and sips his coffee thoughtfully through the following exchanges. These pauses vary in duration as if engaged in real conversation. Oh, Laura? What about? Looks up incredulously. Me? What gave her that idea? His tone gentles. I know that, Mother. No. You say there's so much in your heart that you can't describe to me. That's true of me, too. There's so much in my heart that I can't describe to you. So let's respect each other's... Tom pauses, as if interrupted. I go to the movies. I go to the movies because I like adventure. Adventure is something I don't have much at work, so I go to the movies. I like a lot of adventure. Through the rest of this exchange, Tom becomes hard and impatient again. Then most young men are not employed in a warehouse. Do all of them find adventure in their careers? Shakes his head, faces away from cage. Man is by instinct a lover, a hunter, a fighter, and none of these instincts are given much play at the warehouse. Sighs loudly. What do Christian adults want then, Mother? Laughs bitterly. I reckon they're not. Rises. I haven't much time. You want me to punch in red at the warehouse, Mother? All right. What about Laura? I guess she's the type that people call homegirls. What? Long pause. Tom turns to the door. What do you mean? What can I do about it? I'm too late to... No! Mother... What? Stamping to the door. Oh my gosh. He opens the door, starts down, calls back angrily. Yes! End of scene 4.
So I think that's a really, really clever way of working in some of the motifs, and also making it maybe a little bit less melodramatic and a little bit more absurd, but still somehow like there's a context or like a substance to it. So why do these two siblings think that the glass bird is their mother?
They're both delusional.
They're both delusional. It's not that she died and this was like her favorite one, and then they couldn't get over like the death, and so they just kind of like projected as a way of not dealing with their grief because they're very fragile too. That's what I would have thought.
I like to think that this play kind of exists in a universe all on its own, as I think a lot of plays and literature should. And in this particular universe, if we're following the Borges concept of the library, this particular version, the mother has simply always been a glass bird, and perhaps that's one of the reasons Laura is obsessed with her Glass Menagerie, and will eventually turn into one of her Glass Menagerie characters, either literally or mentally, in this version of the play. By the end, when deserted by her brother and with no one to comfort her except for this glass bird, which is her mother, she too will morph into a character within the Glass Menagerie.
So they're not delusional. This is the reality of the world, the universe in which they inhabit. It's like it's like an abstraction or a fantasy or a world in which these are the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so their mother really is a glass bird.
Yes.
In this world.
That doesn't speak, but...
That doesn't speak.
But if you were to read it side by side with the original, the responses would be identical to what she said in the original. So that's what they're really hearing.
I like it too because there's a kind of a delicate balance between like, all right, so it's like, I don't know, there's something really poignant and like a little pathetic about it, which is like an echo of the actual play, which is all about poignancy and patheticness. Like things are pretty dim at certain points, but there's also like a gothic horror, like Psycho, like Norman Bates.
There is a bit of a Norman, there's a bit of a Norman Bates with both siblings in on it, except in the end, Tom will of course physically, if not mentally, escape the entrapment, whereas Laura, who's already in a much more fragile state mentally, will become overwhelmed and then enmeshed within it.
Or it's like a kind of a gendered, like you could do a kind of a dystopian gender thing too, in which a world in which all women eventually turn into glass birds.
or
not the men.
Not the men, only the women. And
I don't know what
maybe
they would turn
because the father's portrait is still there. So he was involved. Perhaps that's what happened then. Maybe she wasn't always a glass bird, and the children don't recognize when that transition happened, but maybe the father did, and as it was starting, he left, and that's what triggered the final metamorphosis for that character. I just wanted a way to eliminate her, but also maintain her presence, because she catalyzes everything in this play, and she has monologues, and this was it was kind of challenging using this approach, because there are very few instances where there's an equal level of exchange between characters. It's almost either one is doing a monologue or the other is doing a monologue, or the mother is taking over the scene and there's very little input from the child. This was pretty
No,
much
they
the
just
only thing I
he
could
just
do.
erupts in these fantastic explosions that take up like a whole page. And yeah, I mean, you could say it's a memory play, it's a family dynamic play, it's a play about fragile women, but it's also like about mothers and overbearing mothers. Like
Yeah.
it has that, and you know, at the end when he finally leaves and he's still haunted by the past that he thought he could escape but couldn't. He thinks of Laura. He doesn't think of his mother.
No, no, he feels guilty over abandoning Laura.
He feels no guilt. He feels no guilt about that. But yeah, I don't know. I think that yeah, she's such an interesting character, and I think that yeah, the overbearingness by being like this fragile fetishistic object is actually somehow really works like super well.
Yeah, I was originally thinking, well, maybe it'll just be a household pet that they have projections about because the mother abandoned them along with the father. But I think that was too quiche and it doesn't capture what I really like the neuroses that I wanted in the way that I wanted it to. So,
This is a much more like well, on the one hand, it's more you could do it. You could stage it different ways. You could stage it as like psycho neuroses, demented, twisted, total delusion, or you could stage it as like a fantasy abstract, kind of like theater of the absurd, in which these are the rules, and in which case the characters would probably deliver their lines like very differently. But yeah, I really liked it.
good. I'm glad. So I that leads us in, Casey, to what you have presented as your lens into Tennessee Williams, The Glass Menagerie, that you will share with us today.
Okay. So my lens is, I think it's structurally somewhat similar. I was interested in like the underlying dynamic. Like you were saying that you don't necessarily love the play, but you think it has something to offer. And I think that it does have like a very high level of melodrama that is weird, especially when you read it. It would take a really good performance to work for like a good audience, although it definitely could. I like the idea of like the complex family dynamic, and especially creating a scenario in which everyone's a little bit off or like a little bit defective or a little bit unfair, but no one's really bad. And so it allows you to like really understand everyone's motivations. And I think like literature is also supposed to do that, right? Like there are very few actual bad guys. Usually it's just a matter of like understanding like what drives them to do what and what level of desperation they're at. And so that's like I think about this, and yeah, just the complexities of like a family dynamic in a in a high pressure situation. It was interesting to me. So and I'll try not to. Oh, and I also like we were talking about for like the bells and whistles of the set or the setting and how much that was supposed to somehow reflect or impact the action dynamic, because it's a very visual play too. Like yours, like it works when you read it and you describe it, but like watching them have that whole dynamic and how you showed the bird or how you didn't or whatever would really change like the way it was received. So characters. Type straight A. Though an extraordinarily selfish person, there is something understandable about her frustrations. One feels she is the chief victim of her own narrow-minded perfectionism. Cal, Bridget's husband, from an affluent Southern family. Everything comes naturally to him. Obliging, fairly intelligent and industrious, but not terribly ambitious. Was a chunky football player in college, but is now almost unhealthily thin because of the strict vegan diet Bridget keeps them all on. Amy. She likes roller coasters and ferries. Setting. A theme park at a beach town in New Jersey, shortly before closing time. With the curtains still down, the lights suddenly go bright and flash in every color. Speakers emit deafening sounds of various carnival music, shouting, screams, laughter, machines rumbling and whirling, all expressing the kind of fun that so much resembles hysteria or psychosis. After this first eruption, the flashing lights and chaotic noises begin to dim. The music and shouts become a murmur of whining or gruff voices, suggesting that the great mob of parents and their sweet, sodden children have begun to exit the theme park and head home, a monster emptying its entrails into the hungry rooster. The curtain rises. A video of a children's roller coaster is projected onto a screen at the back of the stage. The video shows riders ascending along compact spiraling helix to the top, about 60 feet high. After the first big drop, there comes a sharp 90-degree turn, followed by a series of figure eight. The video is played on loop for the duration of the performance. On the stage, there is laid out a circular track, meant to evoke this particular model of roller coaster's ascending helix. The actors are seated in single file in a bright pink car with "The Great Ferry Escape" emblazoned on the side. They move slowly around the track, the wheels of their roller coaster car humming like an old refrigerator. Amy sits in the front, Bridget in the middle, and Cal in the back. Amy is gripping the bar in front of her and facing intently ahead as if she were steering the Great Ferry Escape through its dizzying twists and turns, which in her mind she is. Bridget sits in the middle. She adjusts her hair, then reaches over to straighten Amy's collar. Behind her, Cal is eating a funnel cake. Bridget: "Might you perhaps chew that disgusting lard and sugar compound more quietly? You're probably covered in powdered sugar." She holds a makeup mirror, and looks behind her. "Yes, there it is." Cal, dusting himself off lackadaisically: "I sure am." Bridget, reaching in her purse for a tissue and passing it back to Cal: "This whole place is disgusting. I hope no one at work finds out I took an entire Saturday off just to go to New Jersey." "Just some good old-fashioned family fun," says Cal. Bridget winces. "What a felicitous turn of phrase, Cal. Well, if it is family fun and not just vulgar consumption, then I guess we should all be congratulated for our upstanding moral behavior. After all, what can't be justified by invoking the sacred institution of the family? The mafia, murder, war, the Disney Channel. I don't think that they're by the ideology of the family. All for the sake of the family, and its endless repetitions, its claustrophobic little routines. So easy to create a family. Any idiot can do it. But stop and wonder whether something so easily gotten is even worth having at all. This swift business I must uneasy make, lest too light winning make the prize light." The roller coaster car pauses. Amy looks back at her mother, but says nothing. Cal, a bit worked up now: "That's no way to talk in front of Amy. Perhaps you've been handling too many divorce cases. They've turned your head a bit. And I don't much care what or whom you're quoting, and heaven help me if I will ever understand why every conversation you have comes with footnotes and a goddamn annotated bibliography." Choo! He sneezes, getting powdered sugar on Bridget's hair. "Sorry." Abashed after his outburst, he tries to use the tissue to get some of the sugar out of her hair. The roller coaster assumes its rounds. Amy turns her gaze back to straight ahead. Bridget: "I was quoting Shakespeare's The Tempest. I was Miranda in it in college, don't you remember?" Cal: Not really. I mean, I remember you being in it, but I don't remember all those lines. I mean, it was a long time ago, and you know I'm not much of a reader. I mean, somehow there's never enough time to be better, grander, stronger all the time. There's only ever time to get smaller. We keep taking things away, but we don't add any new ones onto them. There's never enough time to do anything, Bridget, and not just family things, anything. You know, I want to read more and learn an instrument and learn language and do all those nice things you know how to do. I really do. You've been saying that for years. Honestly, I don't much care whether you do what you do or don't do with your time anymore, Cal. I have other things in mind for my life besides doing the same things and listening to." "Well, if you'd ever just stay home where you belong." He adopts a British accent. "Hello, my name's Bridget. I like to hobnob with the partners. I shall be coming home tonight or any night this week. Terribly important case for the partners. It's champagne versus some other champagne. We are expecting an enormous settlement, and one of the partners' slimy little children is having a birthday party in the French chateau. We have all been invited to go and turn it into a delightful little work retreat. And of course, that is all far, far more important than my own child, whose birthday does not present me with adequate networking opportunities. So don't expect to see much of me this next week. Not until we have wrapped up this case, and then not after that either, for then there shall be another case, and another partner, and another, and still more. And on forever." He abandons his British imitations. "Yes, I should certainly hope you had something in your mind besides that." "I'm leaving you, Cal. I'm leaving you for one of the partners." The roller coaster stops again and tilts down slightly to suggest the drop. Cal, silent. He stuffs the funnel cake into it and nods. You bitch." Amy covers her ears. "You selfish whore. I think you really do mean that." Bridget, her face lights up either with fury or grim satisfaction. It is difficult to tell. "Just as primitive and barbaric as I always expected." She turns around for the first time to look directly at him. "Look at you, covered in food. All your charm, all your politeness is nothing but a disguise for your vulgarity, your cowardice, your lack of gumption. You're not just a primitive, you're an invertebrate. I have no interest in that kind of diminished little man. I want a powerful man in a powerful suit, a man who wants to run the world. And Brian is going to leave his wife and slimy child, as you say, and we're going to start our own practice. We already have investors ready to provide the startup capital. Ah, yes, every adultery needs a good team of investors. Even your love affairs are strategic and cunning. There's no passion in you. Bridget's phone rings. It's Brian, she answers, but says nothing for a few seconds. He isn't leaving his wife. Humming sounds grow louder. The roller coaster lurches forward. Amy screams, and the car dives down and off the stage.
Oh my word!
It's a tiny toy on a roller coaster.
Is that the end?
Yeah.
Okay.
Based on a true story, by the way. I won't go into details, but
now you have to, because I want to know the true story behind this incredible exchange. Oh my God, what an evil
Which everyone
woman.
Immediately goes to 20. What?
What an evil woman. This is...
It's hard, I was writing it, and it's like she comes off so evil, and I wanted it to, I think some of her points are a little bit valid, but I needed a lot more time to make like something you could empathize with. Like things need to escalate so quickly for it to be Tennessee Williams-esque for me. That basically like she just has to like lose her shit immediately.
That's true. I mean, it did capture like the extremely dramatic outburst aspects of Tennessee Williams in the Glass Menagerie, and kind of children is caught on the sidelines. So Bridget, and I think I was a little confused initially because I wasn't sure if Cal, there was some sound going in and out, and at first I thought Cal was the son and not the husband.
No, Cal's the husband. There's a little daughter who I just wanted her to be there so that they had a reason to be on the roller coaster.
Okay.
In the first place. And then there was a longer version in which I explained in more detail a little bit about her, but I decided not to give her any lines. So it was somewhat similar. Like I wanted that third spectator, but and to see how that would exacerbate like the dilemma between the other two. Okay. And I was also interested in it, I think, because like it is like the career versus family thing is a real dilemma that a lot of people face, and I think that's one of like the family drama aspects that like has the most reality. Obviously this is like an absurdist version of that, but like that to me has like there's like a real conflict there, I guess, despite its silliness.
Yeah, but it was an absurd situation, so you definitely played to like the dramatic setting. Setting was a very important part of this. So interesting, you decided to move completely away from like the actual original context. Well, not the original context, the original setting and dynamic of the play, and you kind of created your own with a tone of Tennessee Williams in the Glass Menagerie.
Yeah, I think like I liked the setting and the family tension, and then just the general style of eruptions.
That's so much braver.
So it was much more Tennessee. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Man, that was so much more brave than what I did. Now I feel like I copped out just by like.
No, I loved it. I think that you I think I went like very panoramic, and you went very zoom. But I think that they're both really good ways of reading.
No, I like that the different lenses that they bring to the original work. I think it's interesting because mine is more like playing with it, and yours is like an extrapolation, maybe, is a way of putting it. So
could have written. I mean, it's not as good, but I also would really like to see a play in which like everyone's in a little car, and the whole play they're just in a little row, and it's just going in a circle, and that was supposed to like express or symbolize the circularity and the repetition that would get talked about.
Yeah, it would be very viscerally engaging, and I think disorienting for an audience, but that's all part of the experience. So I like that you played with that. So this was less of you wouldn't call this though a memory play so much then as like on what level, what would be the purpose of engaging the audience in that way with motion and like that kind of visual representation of the family's ups and downs and stomach dropping kind of drama.
I think do exactly what you said. It's just like the Glass Menagerie is a way of taking a quality of a character and then making it like into a symbol, which is very central and which you return back to as a way of underscoring. It's like a playwright's way, I think, when they do these kind of symbolic gestures, is a way of the playwright insisting that these are the themes and they want to be more involved, you know. And so it can be annoying sometimes. It can also be really cool. But it's precisely what you said. Know that like the setting is supposed to manifest the state, and so the themes of this play would be like repetition, circularity, versus escaping from that repetition, circularity, and then also at the same time the kind of the roller coaster of emotions.
Roller coaster.
That would be playing the whole time.
The entire time. So what are the similarities or differences you see? And I know that it's really difficult to capture the nuances of, as I experienced, the nuances of the mother, Amanda's character, in my own representation. I kind of like forsook that completely. But you made an attempt at kind of moving some of her qualities to a new character in a different setting, in a different scenario. And what aspects did you want to incorporate of her character within your version?
That's a good question. I don't know if I thought like I think the Amanda character is much more sympathetic of like her delusions and her living in her like how pathetic her present is in relationship to her past, to the point where you understand why she's thrusting expectations that make absolutely no sense onto her present because she's like needs to go back there. But so that gives her like a lot of pathos. I think that I didn't really think of it in terms of like, oh, what aspects of Amanda could I bring to Bridget? I think I was more thinking about what motivates people to leave their families and like how the logic of abandonment works. Cause like that to me was really interesting. Like what the play is also about, you know, what makes the original play is about what makes Tom eventually fed up. Mm-hmm. And like what makes him willing to just like walk out one day and just not care, even though they're like all he has in the world. And so I guess I was thinking about like that, like why people would do that. And because like they're a distant friend of a friend, her sister. The Bridget is based on my friend's sister.
So
who did this recently, but not on a roller coaster.
What can you share with us about that story? Because I find myself so interested.
I just need to make sure that they never. I don't think that they would see this.
I'm sure they don't listen in.
I won't name it, but yeah, just a very type A, high achieving, works a lot and has a really nice husband and a really nice house and has checked all the boxes in life, and then not too long ago announced to her family, her husband and her daughter of like 6 years old, or like, I think she's 7 now, that she was to leave them and she was going to marry and after announcing this, the man said that no, he was just kidding, not ready to leave his wife. And so she was just left at that point, and that's where I wanted to bring like that character. So it's flatter in the sense that like I've never really cared for my friend's sister very much, and I don't care for Bridget either in this play. And there's something really satisfying about seeing them like taken to that edge and then just dropped over it.
Yeah, that came across because as an audience member, I cared nothing for Bridget's turmoil either. I'm sure because as the author, it was more about like having a vindictive moment against an unlikable character, and less about, you know, like a character with some nuance going through that drama.
Yeah, if one day I can write a character in one page that has nuance, I'll be happy if I can do that. And I think there's also like, because of the child element and they're on like a Tinkerbell fairy themed roller coaster, like there's a little bit of like, I would say like a children's fairy tale undertone to it. Like if yours has like a gothic or absurdist.
Yeah, I mean, if she's the wicked
she kind
witch,
of is.
Maybe, and then you've got like the whole like powdered sugar flying everywhere.
Yeah, I would have. That would have to be played up a lot visually, because I think it's a good like little touch. But in a better written or longer version, I would want to understand that character's motivations, because writing it, I was like, well, I've never liked my friend's sister. And now after knowing this, I really don't like her.
Oh my
But
God.
maybe through literature, I will understand her motivations. And I feel like maybe a little bit just that she didn't really do things for the right reasons and maybe was never passionate. And then this was the first moment that she was like super passionate. Or maybe she's just really very deeply selfish.
Yeah, or I mean, it's a good like instance of hubris, right? So maybe that's like a theme. It could be a theme that you could further extrapolate. I don't know. Would you want to do more with this story, or like would you want to flesh this out further? And if you did, how would you want to do that?
I should also ask you. I would want to make Bridget's character more understandable, because she's the one who's leaving the family, and that's what I was also drawn to in that. So that comprehension that I got from the Tennessee Williams play does not entirely come across here. So I think maybe I would want to do that. It could also be fun to like do like stop animation, or I knew how to make videos or something. I would video, because I just really like the like this bickering and this intense explosive emotion thing going, and everyone's just like in a little pink car going around in a circle that like keeps stopping every now and then. I also learned a lot about roller coasters, which is mostly what my research ended up being about.
That sounds like a fun research project, actually.
I know there are books on the history of the roller coaster. I wish this is another it goes on the list of books I wish I'd written. How about you? Would you go further? Would you go more off further away from the script, but keep the glass bird and the ridiculous children?
I don't know.
Or the fragile children.
The fragile children. I don't know. I like the idea of this alternate universe of fragile women becoming glass, and the men either not really noticing or just leaving them when it becomes too much. But I would want to stick pretty closely, or somewhat closely, to like the original context and have it be sort of like an outburst. So I don't know, maybe we should tell our audience a little bit about the inspiration of why we're presenting the stories the way that we are, because that's kind of the jumping point perspective I'm taking on this project is original story, and then a twist that makes it something else that's still it's just a different version. I guess I interpreted that as like the same story with one little twist, or maybe it's a big twist, or maybe it's still recognizable as like the original work. I don't know if I'll stick with that or not. But did you want to talk more about our Borges inspiration?
No, I think that it was supposed to be very open-ended, and the idea is just that in the spirit of that there's no one sacred original work with a bunch of parallel universes of stories, so to speak, in like different ways. The usual here original and then copy, by having things that are kind of riff off of or inspire or parodies or stolen, and so I think that there's a wide range of what that could mean, and it could mean one character's name, and it could mean a whole script lifted, and everything in between. Like, so I wouldn't want to restrict us.
Mm-hmm.
However, the text that I have picked out for our next episode will require you to write some things from scratch, and I'll tell you why.
Ooh. Well, should we end it at that then for now?
Should I do it? All right. So no teaser for next time. All right. Well, that's the perfect teaser.
No, I don't want anyone to enter anything prepared, because that's the position I found myself in.
Have no expectations. All right. Well, this was a great first episode back after a year. It's been fun.
I know.
And then till next month.
Peace.